Well, I was going to say I've been attending these ARIMA technical conferences for many, many years. And, every year we'd see that Hay Award be given out. And it was really nice to be a part of it, you know, after having seen that award given out so many times. And I think it means a lot to the industry. It certainly means a lot to our team as we went after that. So I was very very happy to see that project was selected.
You may know the American Railway Engineering and Maintenance of Way Association, or ARIMA, as the, quote, keepers of the manuals. You may know them as the, quote, people behind the largest annual railroad conference in North America. Heck, you may not know about ARIMA at all. This podcast is designed, no pun intended, to change your view of who ARIMA is and how ARIMA has changed the trajectory of many railway careers over its 100-plus year history. Welcome to Platform Chats with your host, Walt Blesser, where he takes a moment to discuss the impacts ARIMA has had on the very people who are proud to be called members. Are you ready to roll with ARIMA?
ARE Corporation is a proud supporter of ARIMA and Platform Chats. If you are looking to take your railway structures career to the next level, or simply start it down the right track, please visit us at arecorp.com. Please see our brand new job postings on our careers page or on our LinkedIn page.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Platform Chats. It has been a minute since our last episode, and I feel like I have introduced every episode of 2023 that way. It has been a very weird year in my life, and so I do apologize for the lack of cadence in releasing these episodes. I was much better about that in 2022. Here's to a good 2024, I guess. This time, my excuse, I'm sure you want to hear it. We had, pretty much set up to record this particular episode in the last week or so, and we had a little incident south of where I live, over I-25, where we dropped a coal train. You might have seen that on the news, and I was lucky enough to go down and help them with the reopening of the interstate and the cleanup of the coal train. So if any of you have been involved in derailments, you know that when the phone rings, you just leave, and then you don't really know when you're coming home. You come home when the job is done. So I was gone for a good 3 or 4 days and had to reschedule this to this week. But yeah, it's October already. Before that, we had the ARIMA show. I know many of you were there. I saw many listeners. It was pretty cool for you to come up and say hello. I really appreciate that. I thought it was a great show out there in Indianapolis. Great location. Overall, it seemed like we had great weather. Everything just seemed to kind of go well. So hope everyone that was out there had a good time. And as I was out there, I was actually, before we went out there, I was starting to think about the fact that, we celebrate the Hay Award in ARIMA as one of the most, well, I'd say it's one of the largest honors for a project to receive in our industry. It represents a professor. We actually talked about in a previous episode, we actually spoke with the folks that are on the, I guess it'd be the selection committee that have been involved with it for years on how they select a Hay Award winner. It is a very competitive award to win. This goes back to the Professor Hay, who was at Illinois Champaign, but it has lived on in his legacy for many, many years, and oftentimes they will have descendants. His descendants will still show up at the show and assist with the presentation of the award. So it's pretty cool. I think that you'll hear from the 3 guests I have on today. They'll probably tell you how cool they think it is, because I know only certain projects, as you go through your career, do you even think, this might be a good one to submit. And that's usually something that's like once in a, honestly, I'm not making it up. It's probably once in a lifetime. I think all these folks you'll hear from them. They have significant railroad experience. They have been around the block long enough to know that, yeah, this is a big deal, and I think they're all honored to have won the award. So with that, appreciate you listening to the long intro. I guess you're not as annoyed as you could be since I've hardly done any episodes this year. But moving right along, we have the owner of the Merchants Bridge, representing the ownership team of the Merchants Bridge, Mr. Eric Fields, is joining me today. And then he has two of his partner consulting firms that were heavily involved in the design, and I'm sure they worked right through the construction of the replacement of the Merchants Bridge near St. Louis. I don't want to say any more about the project, but I'll introduce these three gentlemen. Like I said, Mr. Eric Fields, Mr. Kevin Eisenbeis, Mr. Nick Starosky. So we'll start with Eric, and we'll have Eric give a brief introduction, kind of how he got into the world of even being the guy working for the Terminal Railroad Association of St. Louis, and how he even found himself in the seat he is in today. And then we'll move on from there. So Eric, if you could give a brief introduction, that would be great.
Oh, thanks for having us on. Appreciate the invite. So I went to the University of Illinois where, Dr. Hay did his great work over the years, and recently studied under Dr. Barkin to get to fill some gaps in my railroad education, and they got a great program there, and it's great to pass along that tradition to the students as we go down. But I went to University of Illinois out of high school and worked in the highway industry for a bit up in Chicago, and then made my way over into to bridges, mostly bridge rehabilitations, Mississippi River Bridge rehabilitations in St. Louis, working for a couple different entities. One, the city of St. Louis, which owned the Eads Bridge, the oldest river bridge in the country over the Mississippi River. And then went and worked for Transit, the light rail system here in St. Louis, where also worked on the Eads Bridge. It's a dual purpose bridge. But that opened the door, having that background opened the door for a railroad opportunity at Terminal Railroad, who had two Mississippi River bridges, the MacArthur and the Merchants Bridges, both built near the turn of the century into the 1900s. Merchants was 1890, MacArthur finished up in around 1913. But bringing that experience into this role, it certainly helped having background in structural engineering, grant management. Did a lot of had a lot of grant experience from the transit side, and as the Federal Railroad Administration dipped its toe into the grant world in 2008 and on, brought that skill set over and to help finance these large projects.
And so right now you are the chief engineer for the Terminal Railroad.
Yes.
In St. Louis. Okay.
Yes.
I have so many questions when you were talking there, but out of courtesy to the other guests, I'm going to come back to you, Eric. Thank you. Kevin, I'm just going around the room here based on how I see you on my screen. If you could do a brief introduction as well. You've been around this industry for as long as I can remember.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I started in 1980 with a small firm, Harrington and Cortelyou. That was a bridge specialty firm in Kansas City, Missouri. Did all types of bridges. I think my first rail project was in 1980 doing a double main line across Nebraska for the BNSF. And that has all been triple main line now. That was some time back. I was a University of Missouri Rolla, now Missouri S&T grad for undergraduate. And I got a master's degree from the University of Missouri. So a lot of Missouri background where we are, and I'm stationed in Kansas City currently with Burns & McDonnell. So I worked my way through Harrington and Cortelyou. I was the senior principal of that firm at the time that we were acquired by Burns & McDonnell, and that was 13 years ago. And that was a lot of fun. I had a 3-year commitment at Burns & McDonnell, and I've been there 13 years, so it's been nothing but fun, working on a lot of bridges, and that's kind of been my specialty. I'm currently the National Bridge Practice Leader for Burns & McDonnell, and we do both rail and highway bridge, but definitely like those rail structures, and I've always had a fascination for trusses. So it was fun to work on this Merchants Bridge.
And you were involved in ARIMA for a long time too. Were you chair of 8?
So yes, I was chair of 8. I started in ARIMA in, I think it was 1993. Worked through Committee 8. Was the chairman of that committee for the 3-year term that they have for chair, and have enjoyed that. Still actively involved in Committee 8 and attend those meetings every chance I get.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. It's always an honor to have someone on the show that's been with, in essence, the same firm for over 40 years and still enjoying it today. That's in 2023. You don't hear that all the time. So, Kevin, thanks for joining us, and look forward to hearing what you have to say. Nick, how about you? You're with Trans Systems, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Walt. So a little bit about my background. I went to school at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. I got my undergrad and graduate degree there. I started with Olson Associates in Lincoln in 2006. Worked there for a couple years in Lincoln, then moved down to Kansas City. And that's really kind of where my rail career, I guess, took off. At that point, Ken Jennison was a former BNSF employee, assistant director of structures there. He came over to Olson, so I really kind of got my start under him. And he really introduced me and pushed me into joining an ARIMA committee, Committee 8. So then, in 2009, I joined Committee 8, and then 2010, I actually moved over to Trans Systems. So, and then had a lot of great opportunities here to work on some complex projects and trust projects, and then obviously this great project came along. So, and then just about a year ago, I was able to get on Committee 15. So yeah, ARIMA the committee work has been a lot of fun and very interesting, and a great way to learn too about how things come to be in the code. So that's what I like about it.
Well, it's good to have some structures representation on the podcast. I am slightly biased, as some may say, and maybe that's probably why I'm so excited about this particular Hay Award. Nick, I have to ask, and Kevin, so did you guys meet on Committee 8, or since I know you're both Kansas City based, but have you worked together in the past or doing committee work? This is a ARIMA plug.
Yeah, I would say so. It's been a few years now, but yeah, it's probably 2009, sure.
I can also add to that, Walt. We have teamed with Trans Systems over the years many times. We've done several Missouri River bridges with Trans Systems, and I can think back several of those projects. We were a sub to Trans Systems, but we were a major sub with involvement, with the main spans or some of the river-related foundation work. And that's been very successful over the years. So it just made a lot of sense to consider teaming again on this project.
Excellent. And I think that could not have been a better transition if I scripted it myself. So let's go back to Eric. Eric, let's talk a little bit about the Merchants Bridge. And my questions are, obviously there's going to be some interesting technical stuff here, but let's go to that 40,000 foot level for our viewers of the history of it and how you determined that it needed to be replaced or rehabilitated, and how in the world did you go out and get the funding for such a major project? That stuff, to me, oftentimes gets left out.
Well, the Merchants Bridge, the demand for the Merchants Bridge was building as the railroads, traversed to the western front, mostly in crossings and up between Chicago was a huge focal point of the railroad expansion west. But St. Louis had also become a huge node in the transportation network. So there was a huge demand for a river crossing because you could get shipments that would take 2 days to get from New York to East St. Louis, and it would take another 4 days to get from East St. Louis to St. Louis due to the congestion. So there was a huge demand for that rail node. The Eads Bridge was constructed in 1874, but there was not enough to throttle the demand. So the Merchants Bridge was 1890, and it's a fascinating short story. They built that bridge in 14 months. They got a double track river bridge constructed in 14 months. The engineer was a guy named George Morrison, who was a Harvard lawyer, who was also a mathematician. He went out to Kansas City and worked under an engineer, and he really brought mathematics and calculations instead of rules of thumb to the bridge design. Really brought that forward. He was the first guy. Merchants Bridge was one of the first projects, if not the first project, that had specifications created for construction quality assurance. So George Morrison created that bridge in 1890. You know, he couldn't see. He built a bridge that lasted till we replaced it in 2022 is when we put it in service. But it was how could you foresee the loads that are today's rail loads? But this bridge accommodated the 800,000 pound steam engine locomotives that crossed that bridge. But today's rolling stock needs to accommodate 315,000 pounds and in a repetitive fashion to accommodate fatigue considerations and so on. But that bridge is fascinating how it was constructed, and it had iron leading edges into the caissons with timber caissons, and those still sit in the river today. And these guys, Kevin and Nick, came up with a very innovative foundation design to preserve the existing bridge in place for those foundations and make them work together with an integrated system.
I have to interject. Eric, you dropped George Morrison, and if anyone is listening, that's like royalty for the bridge engineering community. If I remember right, I think he was involved with Hannibal in Kansas City, and I'm almost positive he was involved with the Memphis Bridge that still stands today.
Standing. BNSF,
so thank you that's actually some pretty cool history that you brought up. So thank you.
So the reason we made the decision to replace the bridge is due to the freight demand of the country going forward. It is increasing, expecting 25% increases in volume over the next 30 years over, 2021 volumes. But we need it to accommodate current rolling stock. You've got to have these Mississippi River bridges accommodate the 315,000 pound rolling stock and the 420,000 pound locomotives. Now they aren't as heavy as the steam engines, but the rolling stock is much heavier than what we were carrying back in the day. The trains are longer. The limiting factor of the original truss was the top chords. I think it rated out at less than Cooper E50. And the new bridge is going to be Cooper E80, double track. So capacity was the and load capacity was the big trigger for replacing the bridge. How did we finance it? That was very challenging. As much confidence as I had in the engineering community to build this bridge and do it successfully, I tell you what, bringing 5 Class 1s to the table to allocate the financing was very challenging. And but we were able to get it done, and we were able to apply for some federal grants, and we got some federal participation to help fund the project, and it all worked out very well.
And I have so many technical questions for Nick and Kevin, but I'm going to hold off for 1 second. Eric, one other thing I think that would be helpful to some of our listeners is maybe you could provide just a brief definition of what a terminal railroad is. I know there are several across the country, and I know that you are involved, like you just said, with multiple Class 1s that might interchange. Maybe you could just shed some light on what it means to be a terminal railroad.
Yeah, so we're sort of similar to a joint facility. We're our own corporation with shareholders that are Class 1 railroads, and they'll select the directors and managers of the railroad. And our job is to provide a transportation system that accommodates their needs. And that includes in St. Louis managing the 2 Mississippi River bridges and keeping those in a state of good repair. and able to transport the network traffic very reliably and safely. So,
And the 5 that are working with you, I'm just guessing. I'm guessing, is it Union Pacific, BNSF, or maybe I better not say. Which 5 are they?
it's Union Pacific, CSX, CN, it's actually the Illinois Central, which is owned by CN, Norfolk Southern, and CSX. So
Okay. Cool. I'm sure it's really easy to get all of them on the same page about how to spend more money on their assets. I'm sure that was not an easy task for you. When did you, I also do have to ask, how long did it take? I mean, did you identify this replacement 10 years ago? Or, I mean, has this been a long in the works process to say, all right, we're going to finally get the funding for this?
it preceded when I got here. I was just kind of helpful with the federal grant applications and overall bridge management. So I was able to bring those skill sets over and help in that regard to really push this forward and be able to manage these grants and especially these procurements, the consulting engineering firm and the contractors.
So this has been going on a long time. This is, I'm guessing, a pretty sizable highlight to your career.
Oh, no question. I can't go without George Morrison's kind of an interesting engineer. He's an engineer who's an attorney that became an engineer, and I'm an engineer that also became an attorney. And the bookends are just striking. And I learned that as we go through from one of the engineers involved was Nick Marianos, and he was he pushed this project to get replaced, and got to mention him as one of the big proponents of this project.
Absolutely. Nick's a great guy. I know Nick. He's very helpful on Committee 7 as well, and don't know if he listens to the podcast, but there's your shout out, Nick. Speaking of Nick, let's just go right over to you, maybe Trans Systems, and briefly, what was your scope? Obviously Eric must have let the public know that this was going to be a potential project. And then how did you put your team together, and what was Kevin's role? However you want to roll there, Nick.
Yeah, so we teamed with Burns and Mac as a major partner, nearly 50-50. So it was really a big partnership between both of us, and I think we both brought different elements to the project, local knowledge and some local people. Alan Smith was the project manager for the project. He's since left Trans Systems, but he was a big part in that selection committee and the proposal that we put together. But I think we actually had a pretty unique teaming arrangement when it came down to the work share that I kind of wanted to bring up. We both wanted to, say we're designing the main span over the river, right? So I think we got our heads together and we kind of split out different elements of the truss and the substructure, and we either one or the other designed that portion, or we actually teamed together and designed one piece and the other team checked it. So I would go over to Burns and Mac weekly for a while. We had design meetings and just going through mainly the truss design with Kevin and Steve Pellegrino as well, who was heavily involved. So that was a great experience, and getting to learn a lot through that experience as well. So,
and you guys knocked this out in 13 months to beat the George Morrison 14 months. Is that right?
Maybe one span, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So when were you selected, Kevin? How long ago did this kind of kick off? Just to give people an idea of the timeline, because Eric did drop that fun fact.
I don't have the exact date, but I'm going to guess it's been about 4 years back when this all started with design. We had a preliminary phase to the design. Then we had a final design phase, and it went out conventional design bid build. So there was a bidding phase and then a couple of years to get the bridge built itself. So it goes back probably a good 4 to 5 years when we started all this. when we started with the design, there's three main spans over the Mississippi right now. They're 520 feet, the original bridge. So what we looked at were several options. We knew that navigation span was on the Illinois side, and that was the main 520-foot span that had to stay 520 feet. But these two adjacent spans, there was a middle span and then the west span, they could have been shorter. So we looked at, could we put a pier in the middle and make them two 260-foot spans, or could we put two piers in that span and make them 174-foot spans where you would run into, say, deck plate girder type structures, where you might save on the superstructure, but yet you have to pay more for the foundations that would go in the pier. And as part of that study would have been, can we reuse the piers that were there? They were stone masonry piers, or would we have to replace those piers? And back to the teamwork, Trans-Systems was doing the hydraulics for the bridge. And so that proved to show we couldn't really add piers in the river. And that was the real driver of the selection process of what the new span arrangement was going to be. So we kind of settled on the 520-foot span, so we would have three of those, and we would replace those structures in kind. That's kind of the preliminary phase.
I would implore anyone that's listening to this, if you're in the car or you're out on a jog or whatever, whenever you listen to these, if you can get in front of a computer and Google the Merchants Bridge just to get a visual of what they're talking about, it's massive. I mean, when you say 520-foot spans and you talk about the loads that Eric mentioned, this is a momentous occasion here to design something and build something like this. So when you evaluated those stone masonry piers, which, gosh, I keep thinking about that 14-month timeline, just those piers, I have no idea how they did that. What were you evaluating it for? Obviously, when we see piers that big, live load is one thing, but is St. Louis is a kind of an interesting area, right? Is there seismic?
So the interesting part of that pier analysis, obviously the trains are heavy. The piers themselves were massive when you think about those stone masonry piers. We had several things to consider. There's barges that go up and down the Mississippi, so we had vessel collision load, which would be applied to the piers. And because of the New Madrid Fault, if you know Missouri, the Boot Hill area, the southeast corner, is known for a very large earthquake that occurred in the early 1800s, 1812, the New Madrid Fault, they called it. That has effects that can come up into St. Louis. So they're not that significant, but it is a fairly significant earthquake that can hit the St. Louis area. So the real driver was seismic loading. We had to do an analysis of the structure itself for earthquake. And if you look in the AREMA manual, that's the American Railway Engineering Maintenance Manual that we all follow, they have different levels of seismic loading that you can apply to structures, level 1, level 2, level 3. So we actually did the analysis looking at these piers for different levels of earthquake, because the cost to accommodate a level 3 earthquake, which is the 2,475-year return period, is quite a bit more than the level 2 seismic return period. So that all came into play in assessing, could we reuse these old piers or not? The piers themselves would not stand up to earthquakes without some additional supporting. So we looked at how could we strengthen the foundations with either drilled shafts and micropiles, and then we could put an encasement around those piers, bring that encasement all the way up. We tie it into the existing stone masonry, reinforce that cap, and you can make these stand up. And that was how the analysis kind of shook out. And back to what Nick was saying, we kind of divided up how we would design and detail those piers. So the Burns Mac group with the seismic analysis did the foundations, the drilled shafts, and the micropiles down low. And Trans-Systems and Nick took the pier caps and columns and figured that portion out. So in a way, we could share the designs of those piers, and then we checked each other's work to make sure it was all good.
And I assumed while this is going on, Eric's probably having to work with the Coast Guard for that navigation span. Is that correct? I assume you just had to keep the same envelope, both height and width, or?
Yeah, we included that with the consultant package. So Trans Systems was the lead on that, and they took care of that for us. So appreciate that.
And Nick,
Yeah,
did you
same.
go ahead, Nick?
Yeah. We couldn't lower the low chord. The horizontal clearance did get a little bit narrower.
Got it. Okay. And so, what was the final choice here? What did you end up going with? Was it replace in kind? Just for the listener that really has no idea or didn't see the presentation.
Yeah, so we specified to meet current AREMA clearances and load rating, load capacity. So we basically built replaced in kind, but wider structure for the clearances, and better details obviously for fatigue and inspection and like that. So historically, they did want us to mimic the original look of the bridge, so it looks historically sympathetic to the original trusses.
Oh, that's a great question. Was there aesthetic requirements by historical organizations? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, State Historic Preservation Office. We worked with them, and so they were okay with the concrete encasement around the stone piers, but they wanted the truss to look historically sympathetic to the original truss.
Gotcha. And then there's a long approach, right, on the east side. What do we do with the viaduct over there?
Yeah, that's right. It kind of gets. Sorry, go ahead. It kind of gets forgotten sometimes, but the main spans get the fanfare. But the east approach was very unique as well, and really a big cost savings that really allowed for this project to happen too. So there's about 750 feet of steel trestle that was encased in celery concrete fill. Previously, the west approach was filled in similarly with another project before this, but the benefit there was they were working outside of the levee, so we were still inside the levee. We had to put culverts through the existing structure, and then built a kind of a foundation system outside and around the existing structure to handle that. But yeah, 750 feet of celery concrete fill encasement that really saved a ton of maintenance work over time there.
So you can't see any of the old steel over there. It's all pretty much encapsulated.
It's all buried in there. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I mean, go ahead.
That construction method eliminated a lot of track outages. We were able to work below, not have as many track and above crane encroachments. So that helped keep our bridge in service during construction to a great extent. So
since this is the purpose of this podcast really is also around the Hay Award. And this is open to any one of you that wants to respond. All three of you can respond individually. I guess whose idea was it, or why did you think this would be a great project to submit for the Hay Award, and what does winning it mean for you as an individual, as an owner, as a consultant? I'll let anybody go with that. I know that I threw a lot at you, but anyone can run.
Well, I was going to say, I've been attending these AREMA technical conferences for many, many years. And, every year we'd see that Hay Award be given out. And it was really nice to be a part of it, after having seen that award given out so many times. And I think it means a lot to the industry. It certainly means a lot to our team as we went after that. So I was very, very happy to see that project was selected.
Eric?
Yeah, it's absolutely prestigious award. I thought Alan Smith and Nick, you guys were kind of driving the application.
Yeah, I did a lot of that.
Cool. Yeah, I can say that similar to Kevin, having attended this conference for forever, not as long as you, Kevin, but for a long time. When you see the types of projects, they're usually just they're massive, right? I think last year there was a pretty cool one on CSX. It was a yard, I believe, and it was electrified, and it was a big, economic development driver for South or North Carolina. I can't remember at this point, but it touched a lot of people. And I think when you think about bridge engineering, when you think about the number of Mississippi River crossings we have, Kevin, in your career, I think you're a good example of someone who's had an opportunity to touch and work on a lot of these Mississippi River crossings. The firm you worked for that Burns and McDonnell purchased definitely has a history of that. I remember many years ago competing with you guys on certain projects. How many Mississippi River crossings have you touched in your career, roughly?
So I've 7 Mississippi River bridges, and that was not complete designs, but that I've worked on. This was certainly, I would say, the most satisfying and fun project to work on, especially when you look at how it actually got built by Walsh Construction, the contractor. They did a fantastic job of building that. It was a fun one to work on, and good to see going across the Mississippi.
And 7, in 40 plus years of working, that should tell everybody something. Kevin's been around this industry a long time, and the fact that he's touched about 7 tells you how rare, I guess, is the point I'm driving towards. And it's got to be satisfying for you as well. Growing up in Missouri, going to Rolla, you're a lifelong Missouri guy. You didn't just come swooping in from New York City or Los Angeles or something and get to work on this project. That had to be somewhat satisfying to you and Nick. Nick, you said you're from Omaha, and I know, Eric, you're from the area as well. All 3 of you got to work on such a cool, I don't know, I think there's something neat about getting to work in your own backyard on something that is that visible to the public. But
yeah,
Nick,
yeah.
Go ahead.
It's, the St. Louis riverfront and St. Louis in the Midwest, the expansion out west is driven by, the railroads from Chicago and St. Louis. We fed westward expansion. Historically, it is really cool to have an impact on the transportation network in a large way like this. We're rebuilding a network that has served this country well and needs to improve its service into the future. But replacing these 1890 structures, working on these George Morrison structure, that is historically significant, and I'll always appreciate that.
Yeah, you said 1890. When I was down in Pueblo on that derailment, the structure there was built in 1959, and I've watched a lot of the. I'm going to reserve my comments because I'm currently wearing an AREMA hat. I will simply say I've watched a lot of the media around the project, and when you hear them talk about how old that bridge was, and how they got to chase down the paperwork for ownership, etc., and I'm just thinking to myself, old, 1959 in a bridge engineers world, railroad bridge world. That's a new bridge, man. That's maybe thinking about hitting its midlife crisis, and it was almost kind of sad to see that one get knocked out versus some of the stuff you guys are working with. And you said Eads was, I don't know the number. Eads is 1870s.
1874.
Yeah, and that was the first steel. Is that right?
That's the oldest bridge that's in existence. It wasn't the first bridge across the Mississippi, but it's the oldest one in existence.
Okay. Yeah, that's like one of the most famous bridges in the country, hands down. Especially
they use those foundation construction methods all across the Mississippi River ones, and yeah, Roebling. The lineage on Eads and Morrison is very impressive throughout this country.
That would have been an interesting time to be alive, for sure. Nick or Kevin, any other shout outs? I did hear a couple. I heard Walsh Construction. Were there other subcontractors potentially that you would like to thank or you can think of at this time?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many of them, on the construction side, especially. There's a lot of subs to Walsh that did a lot of great work. Genesis Structures, a lot of the foundation and barge design and temporary works design, along with Mammoet, who put in those great red Cantry towers. So that they did a great job and really made, I think, that job possible for Walsh and winning that bid there. But again, then Veritas Steel, as well as the steel fabricator, who did a great job. Very, very few issues to work with there too. So, and then I'll just mention SCI Engineer was Geotech, and Design 9 was a sub on the track design as well.
Cool. Another local firm to the St. Louis area. And Genesis, yep, great firm out of KC, doing construction engineering. The Daves, love working with those guys. Awesome. Well, guys, I really appreciate the three of you spending a little bit of time with me today and helping us with the podcast. This is super cool to hear about, and I might make this a tradition to interview the Hay Award winners because I learned a lot that I did not capture in the 2 minutes that you got up there and received your award and shook hands and take photographs. If there's anything else you want to add, you can, or we can shut it down. I can start with you, Kevin. Are you good?
The only thing I would add, and people can go on the internet and see some of the way that Walsh built this bridge, but it was a combination of float-in, strand jack lift, lateral slide, set the bridge in place. And that was after lifting the old bridge, sliding it over, lowering it to barges, floating away. So there, oftentimes we'll see a float-in or we'll see a lateral slide. This particular project had a combination of all of them, and it's pretty fascinating to watch. So I'd encourage people to go take a look at that.
Yeah, that should get you excited about bridge engineering. That's for sure. Cool. All right, Nick, you good?
Yeah, well, I was going to leave it with a quote from Nick Marianos. He had many on the project, but probably my favorite one was, despite all our best efforts, a bridge was built.
Well, I will say Eric's probably not going to want to try to trump that one. So we'll let that one go. Thank you. All right. Thank you to all three of you for this. Congratulations to all of you, all the participants on this project, and for the firms that were involved. And yeah, very cool. And it was good to see some of you at AREMA. And I'll see you guys sometime in the future. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for rolling with AREMA on today's episode of Platform Chats. For further information about AREMA, please visit arema.org or contact us at info@arema.org.